The jungle, usually alive with the chorus of life, is now wrapped in an eerie silence that presses on the hearts of those who dare to enter it. The air is thick with the ghosts of violence, carrying the bitter scent of gunpowder that still clings stubbornly to the dampness of the forest. Vines, freshly severed, dangle like torn veins of the earth, and the trampled ground whispers of chaos and despair. The patrol of the Virunga Conservation Unit moves as if walking across sacred ground, their machetes cutting carefully, not just through foliage, but through the heaviness of grief. Each man and woman in the line listens intently, for the jungle has a language that only those attuned to its pulse can hear. And then, amidst that silence, something pierces the heart like a blade. A sound, fragile and raw, not the call of a bird, not the chatter of monkeys, but something smaller, infinitely more tragic. A whimper. It is the cry of innocence mourning before its time, the sound of life begging not to be abandoned. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The rangers freeze, their bodies locked by the weight of sorrow, knowing that such a cry can only come from the smallest, most vulnerable souls the jungle cradles. Elena Kamanzi, her face weathered by years of fighting this endless battle against poachers, lifts her head. Her breath stumbles in her chest, for she recognizes this cry too well. It is the song of the orphaned, the hymn of those left behind. The team pushes forward, machetes cutting not only vines but the dread pressing on their hearts, until they reach a clearing where the jungle opens like a wound. And there, at the base of a fallen tree, reality unveils its cruelty. Two tiny gorilla infants, no larger than shadows, cling to one another in terror. Their eyes, wide as the moon, shine with tears that should never belong to creatures so young. One, older by a few months, is muddied and drenched, his fur heavy with despair. The other, impossibly small, trembles as if the weight of simply keeping his head lifted is already too much for his fragile body. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself. A place near your altar, yet here in this clearing, the altar is loss. Elena's heart shatters silently, her whisper carried by the forest. No, not again. The truth lies heavy and undeniable. No mothers hover protectively. No mighty silverback stands guard. No troop breathes nearby. Only the silence of extinction hangs in the air, punctuated by the desperate cries of the young. The jungle testifies to the massacre. The adults, stolen for bushmeat or trophies, have vanished into the darkness of greed, leaving behind these infants, condemned by man's hunger for power. The older one clutches his sibling with a strangled cry, his arms a shield against a world that has stolen everything. The younger buries his tiny face into his brother's chest, whimpering with a voice so soft it could dissolve the hardest heart. Their bond, forged not in play, but in survival, is all they have left. And in their embrace, humanity is reflected. For what are we, if not creatures who hold on to one another in the storms of life? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. The ranger nearest clenches his jaw, muttering with trembling rage, "They won't last a night out here." Elena lowers herself onto the earth, moving slowly, every gesture carved from tenderness. She spreads her palms open, the universal language of peace, and lets her voice fall like a blanket of calm. "Shh, little ones, you're safe now." At first, the jungle watches with doubt. The older infant, a warrior in miniature, bares his tiny teeth in a feeble attempt at defiance, his trembling body quaking with the weight of protection. The younger disappears into the older's chest, hiding his face as if the world itself is too cruel to look upon. But exhaustion is a ruthless thief. Fear, though fierce, bends under the crushing weight of hunger, fatigue, and heartbreak. Their cries falter. Their grip, once rigid, begins to soften. Elena, with trembling fingers, slips off her jacket. Not just fabric, but a vow. a promise of shelter. She wraps it around their shivering forms, the cloth absorbing not only their fragility, but also the echo of their pain. Then, carefully, reverently, she lifts them both, her arms cradling what feels like the very soul of the forest. They are light, unbearably light, 2 bundles of fur and bone, yet carrying the crushing weight of loss too great for any creature to bear. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And in that moment, as their trembling settles into the warmth of her embrace, hope flickers like a fragile flame in the darkness. For perhaps, against all odds, the story of these orphans may not end in death, but in the miracle of survival. A miracle born from the sacred bond between animal and humanity. The jungle may have stolen their mothers, but now, under the fragile roof of humanity's mercy, 2 tiny gorilla souls cling to life as if clinging to the edge of eternity itself. When Elena rises, the infants press instinctively into her shirt, their tiny fingers clutching fabric as though it were the last strand between them and the abyss. Their whimpers dissolve into faint sighs, yet their eyes, wide, glassy, searching, pierce Elena's soul like mirrors reflecting her deepest fears and fiercest resolve. Around her, the patrol forms a living circle, bodies and machetes angled outward as guardians of this fragile miracle. Every rustle of leaves feels like a blade in the dark. Every bird cry like a warning, but the greatest enemy isn't lurking in the forest. It is weakness itself, the slow erosion of life inside the infants' frail bodies. No mothers mean no milk, no warmth, no comfort. Nothing but silence where lullabies once lived. By the time they stagger into the rescue center, hope is stretched thin. Volunteers rush forward, faces blanching at the sight of the trembling bundles. Medical teams swarm, vitals checked, IV fluids flowing, warm blankets swaddling the tiny frames. Yet as the night deepens, the truth hisses like a serpent in the shadows. Medicine cannot heal grief. Food cannot silence longing. The babies cry through the night, each sob a knife cutting into the rescuers' hearts, searching for arms that will never return. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. And in that verse lies the haunting truth. Without comfort, the infants will fade. Night falls like a heavy curtain over the sanctuary. Lanterns flicker dimly in the infirmary, their glow dancing across faces drawn with exhaustion. The cries of the gorilla infants, sharp and relentless, slice through the silence with surgical cruelty. They claw at the air as though reaching into another world, a world where their mother's arms still exist. Volunteers pace, restless, helpless, their every effort falling short. Blankets, bottles of formula, IV fluids. None of it soothes. Elena leans in the doorway, her shoulders sagging beneath invisible weight. Her voice, low and trembling, breaks the stillness. If this continues, they'll give up. Orphans this young, they don't survive long without comfort. The words hang like a death sentence. But then, a spark. Grace Embio, young, tender-hearted, gazes down at the infants with aching eyes. Then we give them comfort. If no mother can hold them, then we will. The room freezes. The idea is unorthodox, almost dangerous. Elena shakes her head, her voice heavy with caution. It's risky. If they imprint too strongly on humans, reintegration may be impossible. But Grace does not falter. Determination steals her voice. If we do nothing, they'll die. Isn't saving them worth the risk? Silence spreads like wildfire until at last resolve crystallizes. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. And with those words of faith echoing, unseen, a radical decision is born. By dawn, the sanctuary transforms. Women from the nearby village arrive, their footsteps carrying the weight of hope. Cloth wraps sling over their shoulders, their eyes steady with courage. They have been trained in hygiene, prepared for a task no textbook ever dared to write, to become surrogate mothers, not replacements, but bridges. Bridges between death and life, despair and hope, wilderness and future. Grace steps first. She kneels before the older infant, her arms wide as rivers. He resists at once, teeth bared, tiny fists flailing, his cries swelling into protests. But Grace holds her ground. She hums softly, a lullaby passed down from her own mother, a thread of humanity woven into sound. Her voice drapes over the room like sunlight breaking storm clouds. Slowly, achingly, the infant's cries falter. His eyes, wide and uncertain, search her face. And then, trembling, he crawls into her arms. A gasp ripples through the rescuers, tears spilling unashamedly. Grace presses him against her chest, his tiny hands clutching her vest, his sobs unraveling into soft, shuddering sighs. Within minutes, he surrenders to sleep, cheek pressed to the steady beat of her heart. The younger infant fights longer, thrashing in a desperate plea for a mother he will never again feel. But when Elena steps forward, her arms cradling him, with infinite tenderness, something ancient and unspoken shifts. Her warmth, her scent, her heartbeat, these are words older than language. The baby clings. His fingers grip her shirt. His cries dissolve. Silence, sweet and sacred, fills the infirmary for the first time since the rescue. Tears spill down Elena's cheeks as she whispers, "They just needed a heartbeat." And in that heartbeat, life begins again. Transformation blooms like dawn breaking over darkness. Days slip into weeks, and the sanctuary pulses with new energy. Morning no longer opens with sorrow, but with soft coos and tiny laughter that fills the nursery like music. Grace moves with the older infant clinging snugly to her back, wrapped in the cloth sling. His curious eyes peeking over her shoulder, patting at her braids. Grace laughs, her voice radiant. "Yes, little one, you're safe now." Nearby, Elena kneels with the younger infant nestled in her lap, guiding his clumsy hand to soft fruit. He fumbles, then triumphantly presses it to his mouth, his face lighting with discovery. Volunteers beam, their hearts swelling with joy. "He's learning," Elena whispers, pride shimmering in her eyes. Day by day, the transformation unfolds like a miracle. The women cradle the infants against their chests at night, their heartbeats singing lullabies no instrument can mimic. At feeding times, bottles are offered with patience, tiny fingers gripping human hands as though anchoring to love itself. Outdoors, laughter echoes. Grace crouches low, letting the older infant climb onto her back. With a squeal, he clings tightly, mimicking how gorilla mothers carry their young. Volunteers laugh as his face glows with triumph. Elena steadies the younger one on a log, guiding his wobbling steps, whispering, "That's it, one step at a time." And when he manages a clumsy hop, joy floods his eyes. Their bond with the women deepens, no longer tentative, but carved into trust, stitched with love. Visitors weep watching scenes unfold. A gorilla infant gripping Grace's finger. As he drifts to sleep, another pressed against Elena's chest while she hums softly. Footage spreads like wildfire, touching millions across the world. "It's as if they've adopted us." Grace laughs gently, wiping juice from the infant's chin. But Elena shakes her head, her voice trembling with truth. "No, we've adopted each other." The sanctuary flourishes with hope, but questions stalk like shadows. Journalists arrive, scribbling furiously. "Is this natural?" One asks. Won't they struggle to reintegrate? Critics whisper, "It is dangerous, unnatural, interference." They argue that this bond may harm the infant's wild future, but within the walls of the sanctuary, those doubts are silenced by something stronger than science. The sound of laughter, the sight of healing, the undeniable truth that love, in any form, saves lives. And now, these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Against all odds, the orphaned gorilla babies, once written into death's story, are rewriting their own. This isn't just an animal rescue or a touching animal story. It is a dramatic wildlife miracle, a viral YouTube story of human and animal connection, a heartwarming animal video that shows the world what survival looks like when humanity answers the cry of the wild. And in this sanctuary, the ending is not despair, but hope. Not death, but life. Not loneliness, but love. Inside the sanctuary, every whispered debate, every question of natural or unnatural, echoes against the walls, critics may argue. But for Elena Kamanzi and Grace Mbio, the answer is carved into their souls. Without them, these babies would already be lost to silence. Elena's voice is steady as stone. Without us, they'd be gone. But even in this place of refuge, the jungle's shadow lingers. One morning, the younger infant refuses his food. His frail body shudders with fever, his eyes clouded with despair. Panic tears through the camp like wildfire. Medics rush, calling out vitals, preparing fluids. Grace paces outside the veterinary tent, her tears carving rivers down her face. He was laughing yesterday. She chokes. How can life turn so fast? Inside, Elena kneels beside the tiny trembling form. His weak hand reaches for something unseen. For comfort. For safety. For a heartbeat. Without hesitation, she gathers him to her chest, whispering, "Shh, I'm here. I won't leave." Machines hum. IV lines pierce fragile veins, but it is her heartbeat, steady and unyielding, that carries him back from the edge. Hours crawl. Breath by breath, the fever breaks. Relief floods the room, tears spill freely, and Elena whispers, "You're a fighter." In that moment, the truth shines. Love can be medicine too. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. And in that promise, humanity answers the jungle's cry. But survival is never a straight path. The women learn that motherhood, even across species, is a constant surrender. Controlled separations begin. Grace steals her heart as she lets the older infant play among other young gorillas. His cries rise, desperate, hands clawing toward her. But she does not falter. "Go," she urges softly, her tears hidden behind a trembling smile. Slowly, he learns. He climbs. He wrestles. He mimics calls with clumsy joy. And one day, his voice rises in a true gorilla call, echoing through the nursery like a song of freedom. Grace's chest tightens with pride. He's growing strong enough to belong again. Elena watches the younger one tumble with his kind, his once fragile body now sturdy, his eyes bright with mischief. He's thriving. She breathes, her heart breaking with joy. The debates outside continue, journalists scribbling, critics doubting, voices asking if humans have gone too far. But inside the sanctuary, the evidence is alive, laughing, climbing. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. And the women know their fight is righteous. These babies are no longer defined by grief, but by love that refuses surrender. Months unfurl like vines in the sun. The once frail orphans blossom into radiant beings. Their fur gleams under golden light. Their limbs stretch strong across branches. Their laughter fills the nursery like a hymn. Visitors gasp as they tumble through the grass. No longer shadows of sorrow, but sparks of wild joy. Grace beams as the older infant climbs boldly onto her back, only to leap into the arms of another young gorilla. "He's not afraid anymore," she whispers, pride shimmering in her tears. Elena's gaze lingers on the younger, his fragile frame now unrecognizable, his body sturdy, his play fearless. "He's becoming who he was meant to be," she whispers, her voice breaking. The sanctuary dares a bold step, reintroducing the orphans to the troop. At first, the infants cling desperately to their human mothers, fear clashing with instinct. But then, a gentle female approaches, lowering her arm in welcome. The babies squeal with delight, clambering onto her back. Cheers erupt, tears flood, cameras capture the moment. The return of the lost to family. Yet, even as they climb with their kind, their bond with Grace and Elena endures. At night, they still curl into human arms, lulled by familiar heartbeats. Love has built a bridge between two worlds, and the orphans dance upon it with joy. How priceless is your unfailing love, O God! People take refuge in the shadow of your wings. And the world begins to watch. Viral videos spread like wildfire. Gorilla infants gripping human fingers, riding in slings, pressing their faces into chests that beat with borrowed motherhood. Headlines blaze. Gorilla babies find mothers in the most unexpected place. From Orphaned to Loved, a miracle in Virunga. Millions weep behind glowing screens. Donations pour in. Children send drawings of gorillas holding hands with humans. Letters scrawled with words like, "Family is love." The sanctuary swells with hope, proof that compassion can ripple across the world. One day, during a community gathering, Elena and Grace stand before a sea of faces. Behind them, the infants, now playful, strong, radiant, climb and chase, their laughter ringing like bells. Elena's voice breaks with emotion. They lost everything, but they found love again. Grace steps forward, her smile trembling. Not the love they expected, but the love they needed. And when they're ready, they'll return to the wild carrying that love with them. The crowd erupts, applause mingling with tears. Cameras flash, and in the middle of it all, one infant breaks from the troop, racing toward Grace, leaping into her arms. She laughs, clutching him tight. The other presses his face into Elena's chest, sighing contentedly. A picture is captured, of family, unlikely yet undeniable. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. They began with nothing, no mothers, no protection, no hope. But love, fierce and unrelenting, came from the most unexpected arms. Two fragile orphans learned that belonging isn't born of blood, but of devotion. In the arms of their human mothers, they discovered family, healing, and the strength to one day return to the wild not as victims, but as survivors. And their story carries a truth that echoes louder than fear. The greatest survival instinct isn't flight or fight. It is love. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love has no boundaries, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional true stories of animal rescue, resilience, and second chances. And tell us in the comments, do you believe these gorilla babies will carry the lessons of love from their human mothers back into the wild one day? Because sometimes the wild doesn't just need protection, it needs love. And so, the jungle that once echoed with silence and sorrow now rings with the laughter of life again. Two tiny gorilla infants who were once left trembling at the edge of despair now climb, play, and dream beneath the canopy of Virunga, carried not only by their own strength, but by the love that refused to let them vanish. Elena and Grace know they cannot shield them forever, but that was never the mission. The mission was to remind them, and perhaps remind all of us, that love transcends the lines we think divide us. For in the embrace of human arms, these orphans found more than survival. They found belonging. They found hope. They found proof that when humanity steps forward with compassion, miracles unfold in the wild. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. The orphans began with nothing, no family, no future, but they grew into living miracles because two women chose to fight for them. And as they now leap fearlessly into the troop, carrying human love stitched into their wild hearts, one truth becomes unshakable. The greatest survival instinct is not fear, it is love. Because sometimes family isn't about blood or species, it's about who refuses to let you go.